"Marry me, and I'll help you raise your daughters," the wealthy stranger said boldly. But the single father's reply wasn't what she expected. Marcus Hayes sat hunched in the corner of a bustling cafe, the storm outside rattling against the glass. His phone screen glared back at him, mocking him with a dwindling bank balance. Calloused hands, once steady from years of construction before the accident, shook slightly as he calculated how long he could stretch what little he had left. Weeks, maybe. And with two hungry little girls, every day felt like an eternity. "Daddy, can we please get the chocolate muffin?" 8-year-old Lily pressed her face against the pastry case, fogging the glass with her breath. Beside her, 6-year-old Emma tugged at his frayed jacket, pointing at the cupcakes as if they were treasures. Marcus swallowed hard. "Maybe next time, sweetheart," he murmured, forcing a smile while the bitter taste of the lie burned his throat. "Excuse me." The voice was smooth, commanding, and unmistakably refined. Marcus looked up. Standing before him was an elegant woman, her silver hair perfectly coiffed, her tailored suit worth more than his monthly rent. Her sharp blue eyes seemed to pierce straight through him. "My name is Victoria Blackwell," she said calmly, "and I've been searching for you." Marcus stiffened, pulling his daughters close. "We're fine. We don't need anything." But Victoria's smile wasn't cruel. It was strangely gentle. "I know who you are, Mr. Hayes, former construction foreman. 2 daughters, Lily and Emma, out of work since the Morrison site accident, behind on rent, selling off what you own just to keep food on the table." His face burned with embarrassment and fury. "How the hell do you know that?" Victoria's gaze flicked to his daughters before returning to him. "Because I make it my business to know about people who matter. And Marcus, you matter more than you realize." She reached into her briefcase and slid a tablet across the table. On the screen was a faded photograph. A younger Marcus in military gear, dirt and smoke streaking his face, standing beside a burning Humvee. And next to him, half shielded by smoke, was a female soldier. Marcus's breath caught. His hands went cold. Afghanistan. The IED. The screams. The day he pulled someone out of hellfire with his bare hands. "Sarah Morrison," he whispered, almost choking on the name. Victoria's polished voice wavered for the first time. "Yes, my daughter. You saved her life that day." The coffee shop seemed to shrink around him. His girls sat silently, sensing the gravity of something far bigger than themselves. Victoria leaned forward, her eyes glistening despite her composure. "She lived because of you. She built a life, married, had children, and though a tragic accident took her years later, she had all of it because you didn't let her die that day." Marcus's world tilted. He could barely breathe, and then came the words that would change everything. "Marry me, Mr. Hayes. Let me help you raise your daughters. You saved my child's life. Now let me save yours," barely above a whisper. "Before Sarah died, she made me promise something. She said if anything ever happened to her, I should find the man who gave her the chance to live. She wanted me to make sure he was taken care of the way he took care of her. I don't understand." Marcus managed his voice hoarse. "You're her mother. I'm her stepmother. But I raised her from the time she was Sarah. Sarah was everything to me." Victoria's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "When she passed, I lost my only child, but she left me with a mission. And Victoria Blackwood always completes her missions." The businessman at the corner table looked up from his laptop, clearly eavesdropping. Victoria noticed and fixed him with a stare that could have frozen fire. He quickly returned to his screen. "Sarah told me about that day, about how you didn't hesitate, didn't think about your own safety. She said you pulled her out and then went back for 2 others while the ammunition was cooking off in that vehicle. She never forgot your face, your name, or what you did." Marcus rubbed his forehead, overwhelmed. "That's what any soldier would have done." "No, Mr. Chen, that's what a hero does. And heroes shouldn't be sitting in coffee shops counting change while their children go hungry." Victoria straightened, her businesswoman demeanor returning, which brings me to why I'm here. She reached into her briefcase again, this time producing an elegant envelope sealed with what looked like real wax. I have a proposition for you, Mr. Chen. One that could change everything for you and your daughters. Marcus stared at the envelope as if it might explode. What kind of proposition? Victoria glanced at Lily and Emma, who were pretending not to listen while straining to catch every word. Perhaps we should discuss this somewhere more private. Daddy, Lily whispered, tugging on his sleeve. Is the fancy lady going to help us? The innocence in his daughter's voice nearly broke Marcus's heart. He looked from his girls to Victoria, seeing something in the older woman's eyes that reminded him of his own desperation, though wrapped in expensive clothes and confidence. What are you proposing? He asked quietly. Victoria's lips curved into a smile that was equal parts mysterious and determined. Something that will sound absolutely insane, Mr. Chen, but I believe it might be the answer both of us have been searching for. Victoria led them to her car, a pristine black Mercedes that probably cost more than Marcus had earned in his best year. As they drove through downtown Seattle's gleaming towers, Marcus watched his daughters press their faces to the tinted windows, marveling at the city from this new perspective. Where are we going? Marcus asked, noting how Victoria handled the luxury vehicle with casual expertise. My office. We need privacy for this conversation. And frankly, Mr. Chen, you need to see who I am before you can understand what I'm offering. Minutes later, they stood in the marble lobby of Blackwood Industries, a story tower that pierced the Seattle skyline like a steel and glass needle. Marcus had driven past this building 1,000 times during his construction days, never imagining he'd walk through its doors. The elevator climbed silently to the theft floor, where Victoria's corner office offered a panoramic view of Elliott Bay. The space was elegant, but not ostentatious. Rich wood, leather furniture, and photographs that told a story of a life lived at the highest levels of business and society. Daddy, look! Emma pointed to a wall of framed awards and certificates. She has so many prizes. Victoria smiled genuinely for the first time since they'd met. Those are for boring grown-up work, sweetheart. Would you girls like some juice and cookies while your father and I talk? While her assistant, a kind woman named Mrs. Patterson, settled Lily and Emma in a nearby conference room with snacks and coloring books. Victoria poured 2 cups of coffee from an expensive-looking machine. Mr. Chen, I'm years old. I built this company from nothing after my first husband died young. I've made more money than I could spend in lifetimes. Traveled the world, owned houses in 6 countries. She handed him the coffee, their fingers brushing briefly. But for all my success, I failed at the one thing that mattered most. Marcus waited, sensing she needed to tell this story her way. I was never able to have children of my own. When I married Sarah's father, she became my world. I threw myself into being her mother with the same intensity I brought to business. I thought I had forever with her. Victoria's voice caught. When she died, I realized that all my wealth, all my power meant nothing. I had no family, no legacy, except corporate profits and empty houses. Through the glass wall, Marcus could see his daughters laughing with Mrs. Patterson, their faces bright with genuine joy he hadn't seen in months. I've spent the last years searching for purpose, Mr. Chen. I've donated millions to charity, funded scholarships, built hospitals, but none of it filled the void Sarah left behind. Victoria moved to her desk, picking up a silver-framed photograph of a beautiful young woman in army fatigues. Then I remembered her final request. Find Marcus Chen. Take care of him. Marcus sat down his coffee cup with trembling hands. Mrs. Blackwood, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but let me finish. Her voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. I investigated you thoroughly, Mr. Chen. I know about your wife's death 4 years ago, about how you've raised those girls alone while battling your own grief. I know about the construction accident that damaged your back and ended your career. I know you've applied for over jobs and been turned down because of your disability. The words hit Marcus like physical blows. Having his struggles laid out so clinically made him feel exposed, vulnerable. I also know, Victoria continued, her voice softening, that despite everything you've endured, you've never once complained or given up. Those girls adore you, and you've somehow kept them happy and hopeful, even while your world was falling apart. That takes a special kind of strength, Mr. Chen. She moved closer, her blue eyes intense with purpose. I have money but no family. You have family but no money. I have houses that echo with emptiness. You have love that could fill any space. Victoria took a deep breath. So here's my proposition. Marcus, marry me, and I'll help you raise those beautiful daughters. The silence that followed Victoria's proposal stretched between them like a taut wire. Marcus felt as though the air had been sucked from the room, leaving him gasping for breath. Through the glass wall, he could see Lily showing Mrs. Patterson one of her drawings. Her face animated with the kind of pure joy he'd been unable to give her lately. You can't be serious, he finally managed, his voice barely above a whisper. Victoria's expression remained steady, businesslike, despite the magnitude of what she'd just suggested. I'm completely serious, Mr. Chen. I don't make proposals lightly, whether they're business or personal. Marcus stood abruptly, pacing to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Far below, people moved like ants through their daily lives, unaware that stories above them, his entire world was being turned upside down. You don't even know me. This is insane. I know more about you than you might think. Victoria's voice remained calm, measured. I know you haven't dated anyone since your wife died because you've been too focused on being both mother and father to your girls. I know you lie awake at night worrying about their future. I know you sold your wedding ring last month to pay for Emma's medicine when she had that ear infection. Marcus's hand instinctively went to his bare ring finger. The loss of that simple gold band had felt like losing Rebecca all over again. How could you possibly know that? Because I make it my business to understand the people I'm investing in. Victoria joined him at the window, standing close enough that he could smell her subtle perfume. And make no mistake, Mr. Chen, this is an investment in you, in those girls, and in something neither of us has had in a long time, which is what? Family? The word hung between them, heavy with possibility and danger. Marcus thought of the empty apartment waiting for them, the stack of overdue bills hidden in his bedside drawer, the growing desperation in his daughter's eyes when they thought he wasn't looking. This isn't how people get married, he said weakly. This is a business transaction. Victoria nodded. Yes, it is at first. But Marcus? May I call you Marcus? The best partnerships often start with practical foundations. My first marriage began as a merger of families in Hong Kong. We learned to love each other over time, and we were happy for years until cancer took him. She turned to face him fully, her blue eyes reflecting the afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows. I'm not asking you to love me, Marcus. I'm not even asking you to sleep with me if that's what you're worried about. I'm proposing a partnership, a way for both of us to get what we need most. And what do you need most? Victoria's composure cracked slightly, revealing the loneliness she'd been hiding beneath her professional exterior. I need to be needed again. I need to hear children's laughter in my house. I need someone to care whether I come home at night. Her voice dropped to barely audible. I need to not die alone in some sterile hospital room with only lawyers and employees around my bedside. Marcus felt something shift in his chest, a recognition of shared pain. Victoria, I know it sounds cold, calculating, but consider this. Your daughters would want for nothing, the best schools, college funds, opportunities you could never provide alone. You'd have financial security, excellent medical care for your back injury, and the chance to be the father you want to be, instead of working 3 part-time jobs just to survive. through the glass. Emma looked up and waved at them, her gap-toothed smile bright enough to power the city below. Marcus waved back automatically, his mind reeling with possibilities. "What would you get out of it?" he asked. Victoria smiled sadly. "I'd get to be a grandmother to 2 little girls who need one. I'd get to help raise Sarah's legacy, the children of the man who saved her life. And maybe, if I'm very lucky, I'd get to discover that there's more than one way to build a family." Marcus turned back to the window, staring at his reflection ghosted against the Seattle skyline. Behind him, he could hear Victoria moving to her desk, giving him space to think. The practical part of his mind, the part that had kept them alive these past months, was already calculating. No more sleepless nights about rent. No more choosing between groceries and electricity. No more watching his daughters pretend they weren't hungry. But the part of him that still grieved Rebecca, that wore his wedding ring until desperation forced him to sell it, rebelled against the idea. It felt like betrayal, like giving up on the memory of the woman he'd loved since high school. "I need time to think," he said finally. "Of course." Victoria's voice held no pressure, no urgency. "But Marcus, let me ask you this. What would Rebecca want for those girls?" The question hit him like a physical blow because he knew the answer. Rebecca would want Lily and Emma to be safe, happy, and loved. She would want them to have every opportunity life could offer. She would sacrifice anything, even his faithfulness to her memory, to ensure their future. Marcus closed his eyes and could almost hear her voice. "Take care of our babies, Marcus, whatever it takes." That evening, Marcus sat on the edge of his narrow bed in their cramped apartment, staring at the business card Victoria had given him. The thick cardstock felt expensive between his fingers, embossed with gold lettering that caught the light from the single working lamp in their bedroom. His daughters were asleep in the living room, sharing the pull-out couch that served as their bed, their steady breathing, the only sound in the quiet space. The conversation with Victoria replayed in his mind like a broken record. Her offer seemed both miraculous and impossible. A lifeline thrown to a drowning man, but with conditions that challenged everything he thought he knew about love, marriage, and family. His phone buzzed with a text message from his landlord. "Rent's late again, Marcus. Need payment by Friday, or I start eviction proceedings." "Sorry, man." Marcus set the phone aside and pulled out the shoebox from under his bed. The one that held what remained of his and Rebecca's life together. Wedding photos, love letters, hospital bracelets from when the girls were born. At the bottom, wrapped in tissue paper, was Rebecca's engagement ring. He'd been saving it for Lily, planning to give it to her on her wedding day. He unwrapped it carefully, holding the simple solitaire up to the light. Rebecca had chosen it herself from a pawn shop during his first deployment, claiming she didn't need anything fancy as long as it came with his promise to come home to her. "What should I do, Becca?" he whispered to the empty room. The ring offered no answers, just memories of a woman who died too young, leaving him to navigate parenthood alone. He thought about Victoria's question. What would Rebecca want for the girls? The answer came without hesitation. Everything, every opportunity, every advantage, every chance at happiness that money could buy and love could nurture. But could he marry a stranger? Even for his daughter's sake? His phone rang, startling him from his thoughts. The caller ID showed his sister Jenny's number. She lived in Portland with her husband and 3 kids, struggling to make ends meet on 2 teaching salaries. "Hey, sis," he answered, trying to keep his voice light. "Marcus, I've been thinking about our conversation last week, about the girls maybe coming to stay with us for a while." Jenny's voice carried the weight of someone offering help she couldn't really afford. "Dave and I talked it over, and we could make room somehow." "It wouldn't be comfortable, but Jenny, no." Marcus interrupted gently. "I appreciate the offer. I really do. But I can't separate the girls from me. They've lost too much already." "But Marcus, you're drowning." I can hear it in your voice. Those babies need stability. And if you can't provide it, I can provide it, he said more forcefully than he'd intended. I'm working on something. A possibility? What kind of possibility? Marcus hesitated. How could he explain Victoria's proposal without sounding completely insane? It's complicated, but Jenny, I need you to trust me on this. Can you give me another week? His sister sighed. Of course, but Marcus, pride isn't worth letting those girls suffer. If this possibility doesn't work out, it will, he said, surprised by his own conviction. One way or another, it will. After hanging up, Marcus walked to the living room where Lily and Emma slept. Lily had kicked off her blankets, and he tucked them gently around her thin shoulders. Emma clutched a worn stuffed elephant, a gift from Rebecca during her final hospital stay. Their faces in sleep looked so much like their mother's that Marcus's chest tightened with familiar grief. He thought about Victoria's elegant office, about Mrs. Patterson's kindness to his daughters, about the way Victoria's eyes had softened when she talked about wanting to hear children's laughter in her house. There had been genuine longing there, not just calculated business strategy. Maybe this wasn't about love in the traditional sense. Maybe it was about something more practical, but equally valuable. Mutual need, shared purpose, the kind of partnership that could benefit everyone involved. Marcus returned to his bedroom and picked up Victoria's business card. Before he could change his mind, he typed out a text message. I'd like to discuss terms. When can we meet? The response came back within minutes. My house tomorrow evening. PM. I'll send a car and Marcus bring the girls. They should see where they might be living. As he set the phone aside, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in months. Hope. It was tentative, fragile, mixed with terror and uncertainty. But it was hope nonetheless. For the first time since the accident, since the months of rejection letters and dwindling savings, he could imagine a future where his daughters didn't go to bed hungry. Whether that future included love remained to be seen. But maybe, just maybe, love wasn't the only foundation on which a family could be built. Outside, Seattle rain began to fall against their single window. But for once, Marcus didn't hear it as a lonely sound. Instead, it sounded like possibility washing clean the slate of their struggling lives, preparing the way for something entirely new. Tomorrow, he would see Victoria's world, the world his daughters could inhabit if he was brave enough to step into the unknown. Victoria's house wasn't what Marcus had expected. Instead of some cold, minimalist mansion, the Tudor-style home in the Queen Anne district felt warm and inviting. With ivy climbing the brick walls and flower boxes overflowing with late-season blooms. As the black sedan pulled into the circular driveway, Lily and Emma pressed their faces to the windows in wonder. "Daddy, it looks like a castle," Emma whispered, her eyes wide. The front door opened before they could knock, and Victoria appeared wearing dark jeans and a soft cream sweater, a far cry from the power suit she'd worn to their first meeting. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and Marcus noticed laugh lines around her eyes that her professional makeup had previously concealed. "Welcome," she said, her smile genuine as she knelt to the girl's eye level. "I'm so glad you could come. I have something special planned for dinner." The interior of the house was elegant but lived in with family photos scattered throughout and books filling every available shelf. A fire crackled in the stone fireplace, casting dancing shadows on the Persian rug where two golden retrievers lay sleeping. Dogs, Lily squealed, immediately abandoning any shyness as the retrievers, clearly accustomed to children, approached with wagging tails. "That's Fitzgerald and Gatsby," Victoria explained, laughing as Emma buried her hands in Fitzgerald's thick coat. "They're old gentlemen, very patient with little hands." As the girls played with the dogs, Victoria led Marcus through the house. It was larger than he'd imagined, but not ostentatiously so. 5 bedrooms, each with its own character and charm. She paused outside 2 rooms on the second floor. I had Mrs. Patterson pick up a few things. Victoria said, opening the first door to reveal a bedroom decorated in soft purples and whites with a canopy bed and built-in bookshelves already filled with age-appropriate novels. For Lily, the second room was painted in cheerful yellow with twin beds and a play area complete with art supplies and educational toys. And for Emma, Marcus stood in the doorway overwhelmed. The rooms were beautiful, clearly prepared with care and attention to his daughter's ages and interests. Victoria, you didn't have to do all this. I wanted to, she said simply. I wanted them to see that this could be their home if you decide to accept my proposal. They continued the tour, ending in Victoria's home office, a smaller, more personal space than her corporate headquarters. Here, the walls were covered with photographs spanning decades. Victoria with various world leaders at charity galas receiving business awards. But Marcus' attention was caught by a section dedicated entirely to Sarah. She was beautiful, Marcus said, studying a photo of Sarah in her wedding dress. Inside and out, Victoria's voice carried the weight of maternal love. She would have made an incredible mother. She had this way of making everyone around her feel special, important, like her stepmother. Victoria looked surprised by the observation. I hope so. I tried to give her everything I never had. Stability, unconditional love, the confidence to pursue her dreams. They were interrupted by laughter from downstairs, where the girls had apparently discovered Victoria's grand piano. The sound of small fingers picking out a simple melody filled the house with life. They're taking piano lessons, Victoria asked. Marcus shook his head, embarrassed. We can't afford. Lily's been teaching herself from library books and YouTube videos. She has a real gift for it. Victoria's eyes lit up. I studied piano for years. I'd love to teach her properly if she's interested. They found the girls in the music room where Lily was carefully pressing keys while Emma danced to the resulting melody. The sight of his daughters in this beautiful space surrounded by warmth and possibility made Marcus's throat tighten with emotion. Dinner's ready, Victoria announced. I hope everyone likes spaghetti and meatballs. The meal was comfortable. Was surprisingly natural. Victoria asked the girls about school, their friends, their favorite subjects, listening to their answers with genuine interest. She told stories about her travels, about the countries she'd visited and the cultures she'd experienced, painting vivid pictures that had both girls hanging on her every word. After dinner, while the girls played in the living room, Marcus and Victoria sat in her study with coffee and the serious conversation they'd been avoiding all evening. Before we discussed terms, Victoria said, I need you to understand something. This isn't charity, Marcus. This is partnership. I'm not doing this to save you. I'm doing this because we can save each other. Marcus nodded, though he wasn't sure he fully understood the distinction. If you agree to this arrangement, I have certain expectations. The girls would be legally adopted as my daughters. You would have equal say in all parenting decisions, but I won't be relegated to the role of distant benefactor. I want to be part of their daily lives, helping with homework, attending school events, being present for both the mundane moments and the milestones. And us, Marcus asked, what would our marriage look like? Victoria considered this carefully. Separate bedrooms, at least initially. No physical expectations, unless that changes organically over time. We would present as a united front to the world, attend social functions together, be partners in every sense except the romantic one. Unless what? Unless we discover that partnership can grow into something more. I'm not opposed to that possibility, Marcus, but I won't demand it and I won't expect it. From the living room came the sound of Lily playing a more complex melody on the piano. The notes floating through the house like a preview of what their life here could become. There's something else, Victoria said quietly. Something I haven't told you about Sarah's death. Marcus tensed, sensing this was important. The accident that killed her. It wasn't random. She was driving to meet me for lunch when a drunk driver ran a red light. She died on the way to the hospital. But before the paramedics arrived, she was conscious. A witness heard her final words. Victoria's voice broke slightly. She said, "Tell Victoria to find Marcus Chen. Tell her to keep her promise. Tell her that love comes in many forms." The weight of those words settled over Marcus like a mantle. Sarah, dying on a Seattle street, had been thinking of him, a man she'd known for perhaps an hour years ago, but whose actions had given her the life she was now losing. "So, you see," Victoria continued, "this isn't just about what I want or what you need. This is about honoring a dying woman's wish, about creating something meaningful from tragedy." Marcus looked toward the living room where his daughters were building a fort with couch cushions under the watchful eyes of two patient golden retrievers. They looked happier than he'd seen them in months, comfortable in this beautiful home with this complex woman who seemed genuinely interested in their well-being. "What are your terms?" he asked quietly. Victoria smiled, and Marcus realized it was the first time he'd seen her look truly relieved. "Let's start with the wedding, and we'll figure out the rest as we go." Weeks later, Marcus stood in front of the full-length mirror in Victoria's guest bedroom, adjusting his tie for the third time. The simple gray suit Victoria had insisted on buying him fit perfectly, tailored to accommodate the slight stoop his back injury had left him with. Through the window, he could see the garden where they decided to hold the small ceremony. Just the girls, Mrs. Patterson as witness and a judge. Victoria knew personally. A soft knock interrupted his nervous fidgeting. "Come in," he called, expecting Victoria or one of the girls. Instead, Jenny entered, her face a mixture of concern and curiosity. She'd driven up from Portland that morning, despite Marcus' assurances that she didn't need to come. "So this is really happening?" she said, taking in the elegant bedroom in the wedding attire. Marcus nodded, not trusting his voice. The past weeks had been a whirlwind of legal paperwork, gentle integration into Victoria's world, and countless conversations about boundaries, expectations, and the girls' adjustment. They'd attended family therapy sessions with Dr. Sarah Ricks, Victoria's idea, to ensure they were all processing the dramatic changes healthily. "Marcus, are you sure about this?" Jenny sat on the edge of the king-sized bed. I've met Victoria and she seems wonderful. But marriage to someone you barely know." "I know her better now," Marcus said, though he understood Jenny's concern. "We've spent every evening together these past weeks. She's good with the girls, Jenny, and she's been nothing but honest about what this is and what it isn't. But what happens when one of you wants something different? What if she falls in love with someone else? What if you do?" Marcus had asked himself the same questions during sleepless nights in the guest bedroom. Then we'll deal with it when it happens. Right now, this is what's best for everyone involved. Jenny stood and hugged him tightly. "I just want you to be happy." "Big brother, you've sacrificed so much already." "I'm not sacrificing anything," Marcus said, and realized he meant it. "I'm gaining a partner, financial security, and the chance to give my daughters everything I couldn't provide alone. That's not sacrifice. That's opportunity." Minutes later, Marcus walked through Victoria's garden toward the small altar they'd set up beneath an arbor of climbing roses. The Seattle autumn had cooperated with a rare sunny day, golden light filtering through the changing leaves. Lily and Emma walked ahead of him, scattering rose petals and giggling with delight at their important role. Victoria was already waiting, stunning in a simple ivory dress that complemented her silver hair. She wore Sarah's pearl necklace. She'd shown it to Marcus earlier, explaining that it felt right to have her daughter's blessing represented in some way. As Marcus took his place beside her, Victoria squeezed his hand gently. "No regrets," she whispered. "None," he whispered back, surprised to find it was true. Judge Morrison, no relation to the Morrison from Marcus's construction accident, despite the name coincidence, began the simple ceremony. The words washed over Marcus in a blur until they reached the vows they'd written together. "Marcus," Victoria said, her voice steady but warm, "I promise to be your partner in raising these beautiful girls. I promise to respect the boundaries we've established while remaining open to wherever this journey takes us. I promise to honor the memory of the woman who brought you into this world of fatherhood and to never try to replace her in your heart or theirs." Marcus's throat tightened as he responded with his own carefully chosen words. "Victoria, I promise to be your partner in building the family we both need. I promise to help you heal from the loss of Sarah by creating something beautiful in her honor. I promise to give this marriage, this partnership, my full commitment and respect." When Judge Morrison pronounced them married, Victoria kissed Marcus's cheek gently, a gesture that felt natural rather than awkward. The girls cheered and ran to embrace them both. And for a moment, Marcus could almost believe they'd always been a family. The celebration dinner was intimate. Just the five of them, plus Mrs. Patterson, who had become something of a grandmother figure to the girls over the past weeks. As evening fell and the girls played in the garden with Fitzgerald and Gatsby, Marcus found himself on the back porch with Victoria, both of them holding glasses of champagne they'd barely touched. "So," Victoria said with a smile, "how does it feel to be married to a complete stranger?" Marcus laughed, some of the day's tension finally releasing. "Like the beginning of something I can't quite define yet." Victoria nodded thoughtfully. "That's exactly how it should feel. If we knew what we were getting into, it wouldn't be much of an adventure, would it?" From the garden came Lily's delighted laughter as she taught Emma a clapping game. Both girls looked healthier already. Better nutrition and the security of knowing they had a permanent home had brought color back to their cheeks and brightness to their eyes. "Victoria," Marcus said quietly, "thank you for all of this, for giving them what I couldn't." "Thank you," she replied, "for giving me what I thought I'd lost forever. The chance to be needed by children who matter." As they sat in comfortable silence, watching their daughters play in the gathering dusk, Marcus realized that love might not be the only foundation for a strong marriage. Sometimes partnership, mutual respect, and shared purpose could be just as powerful. Whether love would grow between them remained to be seen, but for now, this was enough. The wedding night passed quietly with Marcus in his own room down the hall from Victoria's. But before he fell asleep, he heard her voice through the baby monitor she'd installed. She was reading bedtime stories to both girls, their voices mingling in the kind of domestic harmony he'd stopped believing was possible. For the first time in years, Marcus fell asleep without worry, gnawing at his mind. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new adjustments, new discoveries about this unconventional family they were building. But tonight, everyone he loved was safe, fed, and happy. That was more than enough to build a future on. 6 months into their marriage, Marcus stood in the doorway of Victoria's home office, watching her help Lily with algebra homework. The sight still surprised him sometimes. This powerful CEO patiently explaining mathematical concepts to his year-old daughter, her business attire replaced by jeans and one of the world's best stepmom t-shirts Emma had picked out for her birthday. "If X equals and we multiply that by 3, what do we get?" Victoria asked, her voice gentle but encouraging. Lily said proudly, "Exactly. Now, what if we add the original value of X to that result?" Marcus smiled as he watched his daughter's face light up with understanding. Lily had always been bright, but Victoria's patient tutoring and the stability of their new life had allowed her natural intelligence to flourish. Her grades had improved dramatically, and she was now taking advanced classes that would have been impossible in their old school district. "Dad?" Emma barreled into him from the kitchen, her face smeared with what looked like cake batter. "Victoria's teaching me to make chocolate chip cookies for the school bake sale." "Is she now?" Marcus scooped Emma up, not caring about the mess she was making on his shirt. "And how's that going?" "I may have let her add a few extra chocolate chips," Victoria said, appearing in the doorway with flour in her silver hair and a smile that had become increasingly frequent over the past months. This domestic scene was so different from the formal, careful interactions they'd started with. The first few months had been an adjustment period, learning each other's routines, establishing boundaries, figuring out how to parent together without stepping on each other's toes. But gradually, naturally, they'd found their rhythm. "How was physical therapy?" Victoria asked, noting the slight ease in Marcus's posture that indicated a good session. "Doctor, Martinez thinks I might be ready to try some light construction work again. Nothing heavy, but maybe project management or consulting." Marcus had been surprised by how much Victoria had encouraged his recovery, hiring the best specialists and never making him feel guilty about the medical expenses. "That's wonderful news, but only if you want to, Marcus. You don't need to work for financial reasons." That had been one of their ongoing discussions. Victoria had been adamant that Marcus should pursue whatever career path fulfilled him, not what necessity demanded. It had taken him months to stop feeling like a kept man and start appreciating the freedom to choose his future based on passion rather than desperation. Actually, Marcus said, setting Emma down, "I wanted to talk to you about something." Victoria's attention sharpened. She'd learned to read his moods with surprising accuracy. "Girls, why don't you go check on those cookies? Make sure they're not burning." Once they were alone, Victoria gestured to the couch in her office. "What's on your mind?" Marcus sat beside her, close enough to catch the subtle scent of her perfume. Something light and floral that suited her better than the severe businesswoman fragrance she'd worn when they first met. "I've been thinking about Sarah a lot lately." Victoria's expression grew gentle, and they talked about her daughter many times over the months, sharing memories and stories that had helped them both process their grief and connection. "The anniversary of the accident is coming up," Marcus continued, "and I realized I've never properly thanked her, never visited her grave, or acknowledged what she did for us." Victoria's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "You want to visit the cemetery? I want to take the girls. I want them to understand who Sarah was and why she's part of our story. I want to tell her about this family we've built in her honor." Victoria reached for his hand, a gesture that had become natural over the months as their friendship deepened. "Marcus, that means more to me than you could possibly know." "There's something else," Marcus said, suddenly nervous. "I've been thinking about our arrangement, about what this marriage is and what it could become." Victoria's grip on his hand tightened slightly. They'd been dancing around this conversation for weeks, the growing intimacy between them becoming harder to categorize as purely platonic partnership. "I know we started this as a business arrangement," Marcus continued. "Two people helping each other out of necessity. But Victoria, these past months, you've become more than just my wife on paper. You're my friend, my partner, my girl's mother in every way that matters." Victoria's breath caught. "Marcus, I'm not saying I'm in love with you," he said quickly. "I'm not sure I know what that means anymore after losing Rebecca, but I care about you. I respect you. I enjoy your company, and I trust you completely with the most precious things in my life." Victoria was quiet for a long moment, her blue eyes searching his face. "I feel the same way," she said finally. "I didn't expect to, but I do. You've given me purpose again, Marcus. Not just with the girls, but you've made me feel like a woman again. Not just a CEO or a widow or someone defined by her losses." From the kitchen came the sound of a timer going off and the girls' excited voices announcing that the cookies were done. The ordinary domestic interruption made them both laugh, breaking some of the tension. "So, what are you suggesting?" Victoria asked. "That we try to be a real marriage." Marcus considered this. I'm suggesting we stop pretending we're just business partners. Maybe we see where this friendship leads without putting pressure on it to become something specific. Victoria nodded slowly. No timeline, no expectations, just openness to whatever develops naturally. Exactly. They were interrupted by Lily calling from the kitchen. Dad, Victoria, come taste our cookies. As they walked toward the kitchen together, Victoria slipped her hand into Marcus's. It was a small gesture, but it felt like crossing a bridge they hadn't even realized they'd been approaching. By the way, Victoria said as they reached the kitchen door, I love the idea of visiting Sarah, but I think we should bring flowers from her favorite rose bush. I planted one in the garden last month, the same variety she grew at her house. Marcus squeezed her hand gently. She would love that. In the kitchen, surrounded by the chaos of baking and his daughter's laughter, Marcus realized that somewhere along the way, their arrangement had stopped being about survival and started being about building something beautiful together. Whether that would eventually include romantic love remained to be seen. But for now, the deep affection and partnership they'd cultivated felt like more than enough foundation for whatever came next. The argument started over something trivial. Victoria's suggestion that they hire a housekeeper to help manage the larger home, but it quickly spiraled into something much deeper and more painful. It was their first real fight as a married couple, months after their wedding, and it caught them both off guard with its intensity. I don't need someone else taking care of my responsibilities, Marcus said, his voice tight with frustration as he loaded dishes into Victoria's high-end dishwasher with unnecessary force. It's not about taking care of your responsibilities, Victoria replied, trying to keep her tone reasonable. It's about making our lives easier. You're going back to work part-time. I'm traveling more for business. The girls have activities every night of the week. We could use the help. We could use the help, Marcus repeated, his voice bitter. You mean you could use the help? I'm perfectly capable of keeping house and taking care of my daughters. Victoria's carefully maintained patience finally snapped. Our daughters? Marcus, they became our daughters the day you signed those adoption papers, and nobody is questioning your capabilities. I'm suggesting we make a practical decision that benefits everyone. The girls were at a sleepover, leaving them alone in the house for the first time in weeks. What should have been a rare opportunity for relaxation had instead become a battlefield where months of unspoken tensions finally erupted. This is what this has all been about, isn't it? Marcus slammed the dishwasher shut and turned to face her fully. You rescuing the poor, incapable single father who can't manage on his own. Well, I've got news for you, Victoria. I was managing just fine before you showed up. The words hit Victoria like physical blows. Her face went pale, and Marcus immediately regretted his outburst, but the damage was already done. Managing just fine. Victoria's voice was dangerously quiet. Marcus, you were days away from eviction when I found you. Lily had lost El Pass because you were skipping meals to make sure she ate. You were selling your dead wife's jewelry to buy antibiotics for Emma. Each fact she recited felt like salt in an open wound. Marcus's shame and pride wared in his chest. The old feelings of inadequacy and failure rising to the surface despite all the progress they'd made. So this is charity after all, he said, his voice hollow. You're keeping me around like some kind of pet project. The grateful veteran you saved from homelessness. How dare you? Victoria's control finally cracked completely. How dare you reduce what we've built to charity? Do you think I spent months learning to braid Lily's hair for charity? Do you think I stayed up all night when Emma had nightmares because I felt sorry for you? Tears streamed down her face, and Marcus was shocked by the raw pain in her expression. He'd never seen Victoria cry before, not even when talking about Sarah's death. You want to know what this is really about? Victoria continued, her voice breaking. I'm terrified, Marcus. terrified that you'll wake up one day and realize you don't need me anymore, that the girls don't need me anymore, that I'm just the rich woman who bought herself a family because she was too pathetic to build one naturally. Her confession hung in the air between them, exposing vulnerabilities that neither had acknowledged before. Marcus felt his anger drain away, replaced by understanding and guilt. Victoria, I didn't mean yes, you did. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, trying to regain her composure. And maybe you're right. Maybe this is all artificial, just me, trying to fill the hole Sarah left behind by inserting myself into someone else's family. Marcus moved toward her, but Victoria stepped back, maintaining the physical distance that matched the emotional chasm that had suddenly opened between them. I should check on the Henderson contract, Victoria said, her voice returning to the professional tone she used as armor. There are calls I need to make to Tokyo. She started to leave the kitchen, but Marcus caught her arm gently. Victoria, wait. Please. She stopped but didn't turn around. I'm scared too, Marcus said quietly. Every day I wake up in this beautiful house, watching you teach my daughters things I never could, seeing how much they adore you. And I wonder when you're going to realize you could have had this with someone who actually deserves it. Victoria turned then, her eyes red, but no longer crying. What do you mean? Marcus ran his hands through his hair, struggling to find the words. You could have married anyone. Some successful businessman, a widower from your social circle, someone who could be an equal partner instead of a charity case you took on out of obligation. Is that really what you think this is? I don't know what to think anymore, Marcus admitted. Months ago, you were a stranger who offered me a business arrangement. Now you're everything to those girls. You're my best friend, my partner, someone I trust completely. But I still don't understand why you chose me, why you chose this difficult path when you had so many other options. Victoria sat down at the kitchen island, suddenly looking exhausted. Do you want to know why I really chose you, Marcus? He nodded, moving to sit across from her. Because when I watched you with your daughters in that coffee shop, I saw something I'd never had and always wanted. Not money, not success, not even love in the romantic sense. I saw a man who would sacrifice everything for his children without hesitation or resentment. I saw the kind of parent I'd always hoped to be, but never had the chance to become. She looked directly at him, her blue eyes intense with sincerity. I didn't choose you because I felt sorry for you. Marcus, I chose you because I admired you, because I wanted to learn from you how to love so completely, so selflessly. Marcus felt something shift in his chest, a loosening of tension. He'd carried for months without realizing it. And yes, Victoria continued, I do want to hire a housekeeper. Not because I think you're incapable, but because I want us to spend our time together, focused on being a family instead of on laundry and cleaning. I want more evenings like tonight when we can sit and talk and work through our fears together. Marcus reached across the island and took her hand. I'm sorry. I was being an ass. You were being human, Victoria said, squeezing his fingers. We both were. Maybe it's about time we had this fight. It means we're not just politely coexisting anymore. So what does that mean for us? Victoria smiled, the first genuine expression of happiness she'd shown all evening. It means we're becoming a real family, complete with arguments, fears, insecurities, and the kind of messy honesty that only people who truly care about each other can handle. Marcus nodded, feeling lighter than he had in weeks. In that case, let's hire the housekeeper. And Victoria, thank you for choosing us, even when we don't make it easy. Thank you, she replied, for letting me. 1 year after their wedding, Marcus made a discovery that changed everything he thought he knew about Victoria's motivations. It happened by accident. He'd been looking for the girls' birth certificates in Victoria's home office when he opened the wrong filing cabinet drawer and found a folder marked Private Investigation. Chen family. His hands shook as he opened it, revealing a comprehensive dossier on his life that went far beyond what Victoria had admitted to knowing. Bank records, medical files, employment history, even photographs of him and the girls taken without his knowledge in the weeks before Victoria had approached them at the coffee shop. But it was the final document in the folder that made his blood run cold. A psychological evaluation performed by a private psychiatrist based on surveillance footage and interviews with people in Marcus's life. The clinical language was devastating. Subject shows signs of severe depression and potential suicidal ideation. Frequent isolation behaviors, weight loss, and increasing detachment from social connections suggest high risk for self-harm if current stressors continue to escalate. Marcus sank into Victoria's desk chair, the implications washing over him like ice water. She hadn't just known about his financial troubles. She'd known he was falling apart emotionally. The report was dated weeks before their first meeting, which meant Victoria had approached him not just to honor Sarah's request, but because she believed he was in danger of harming himself. The sound of the front door opening and the girls' voices calling out their return from school barely registered. Marcus sat frozen, staring at the clinical assessment of his mental state from a psychiatrist he'd never met, based on observations by investigators he'd never seen. Marcus. Victoria's voice came from the doorway. I thought I heard. She stopped abruptly when she saw the open file in his hands, her face going pale. Were you ever going to tell me? Marcus asked quietly, his voice eerily calm. Victoria stepped into the office and closed the door behind her, probably to keep the girls from overhearing. Marcus, let me explain. Explain what? That you didn't just investigate my finances. You had me psychologically evaluated like some kind of specimen. That you married me because you thought I was going to kill myself. That's not why I married you, Victoria said quickly, moving closer but stopping when Marcus held up a hand. Isn't it? According to Dr. Williams here, I was showing concerning behavioral patterns consistent with severe depression and potential self-harm. Is that what this has all been about? Suicide prevention disguised as a marriage proposal? Victoria's composure cracked. Marcus, please. Yes, I was concerned about your mental state. The investigator I hired noticed patterns that worried him, and I wanted to understand the full scope of what you were dealing with. But that doesn't change the fact that I genuinely wanted to help, that this marriage has been real for me from the beginning. Has it? Marcus stood, the file clutched in his hands like evidence in a criminal trial. Because according to this timeline, you'd already decided to approach me before you ever sat down at our table in that coffee shop. The whole Sarah story, the dramatic timing, it was all calculated. The Sarah story is completely true, Victoria said, her voice rising with emotion, every word of it. Yes, I planned our meeting, but Marcus, I'd been looking for you for years. When I found you, when I saw what you were going through, it felt like fate. Fate or opportunity. Marcus's calm was beginning to crack, revealing the hurt and betrayal underneath. A desperate man with 2 young daughters, at risk for self-harm, the perfect candidate for your rescue fantasy. Victoria's eyes flashed with anger. How dare you reduce what we've built to a rescue fantasy? Look around you, Marcus. Look at what the girls have become over the past year. Look at what you've become. Tell me this has all been some elaborate psychological manipulation. Marcus wanted to argue, but he couldn't deny the truth of what she was saying. Lily was thriving in her advanced classes, confident and happy in ways she'd never been before. Emma had blossomed into a vibrant, curious child who no longer woke up crying from nightmares about being hungry. And Marcus himself, he was healthy. He was working in a job he loved and had found a sense of purpose he'd lost after Rebecca's death. That doesn't excuse the deception, he said, though his voice lacked its earlier conviction. Victoria moved closer, her eyes pleading. You're right. I should have told you about the investigation from the beginning. I should have been completely honest about how much I knew and how I found you. But Marcus, would it have changed anything? Would you have refused my proposal if you'd known I was concerned about your mental health? Marcus considered this. The truth was, he probably would have been too proud to accept help if he'd known it was motivated by pity or concern rather than mutual benefit. The girls are going to wonder where we are, Victoria said softly. Can we table this discussion until after they're in bed? They don't need to see us like this. Marcus nodded reluctantly, not wanting to drag Lily and Emma into their adult problems. But as they went through the motions of family dinner, helping with homework, listening to stories about their school day, maintaining the comfortable domestic routine they'd built over months, Marcus felt like he was performing a role rather than living his life. Later that night, after the girls were asleep, they sat in Victoria's study with the damning files spread between them on the coffee table. "What do you want me to say, Marcus?" Victoria asked, her voice tired. That I regret investigating you? That I regret knowing you were in danger and trying to help? I can't regret those things, even if my methods were questionable. I want you to tell me the truth about why you really married me, Marcus said. Was it for the reasons you told me, mutual need, honoring Sarah's request? Or was it because you saw a broken man who needed saving? Victoria was quiet for a long moment, staring at the psychological evaluation that had started this confrontation. Both, she said finally. It was both, Marcus. I did want to honor Sarah's request, and I did see an opportunity for mutual benefit. But yes, I was also terrified that you were going to hurt yourself and leave those girls orphaned. The honest admission hit Marcus harder than continued deception would have. So, what happens now? Do we continue this marriage knowing it started as a suicide intervention? Victoria looked up at him, her blue eyes bright with unshed tears. That's up to you. But Marcus, I need you to know something. Whatever my original motivations, what I feel for you now is real. This family we've built is real. My love for those girls and my growing feelings for you have nothing to do with pity or rescue fantasies. Marcus stared at the woman who had become his wife, his partner, his daughter's second mother. Despite his hurt and anger, he couldn't deny the fundamental truth of what she was saying. Their relationship had evolved far beyond its calculated origins into something genuine and meaningful. I need time to process this, he said finally. I need to understand what it means that our marriage started with such a fundamental deception. Victoria nodded, though he could see the fear in her eyes. Take all the time you need. Just don't make any permanent decisions while you're angry. Okay? Think about the girls, about what we've built together. As Marcus headed upstairs to the guest bedroom, for the first time in months, sleeping apart from Victoria by choice rather than circumstance, he carried with him the weight of this new knowledge. Tomorrow, he would have to decide whether their marriage could survive the revelation that it had been built on foundations more complex and calculated than either of them had initially admitted. The question wasn't whether Victoria had deceived him. She clearly had. The question was whether their love could overcome the circumstances of its origin. Marcus spent 3 sleepless nights in the guest bedroom wrestling with the revelation about Victoria's investigation and his own conflicted feelings. During the day, they maintained a careful politeness for the girls' sake, but the easy intimacy they'd built over months felt strained and artificial. On the 4th morning, Marcus made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. He asked Victoria to meet him at the cemetery where Sarah was buried. They drove there in silence, the autumn rain creating a melancholy backdrop that seemed fitting for the difficult conversation ahead. Sarah's grave was well tended with fresh flowers that Victoria brought weekly in a small American flag acknowledging her military service. Marcus stood before the simple headstone, reading the inscription. Sarah Elizabeth Morrison Blackwood, beloved daughter. She lived with courage and died with honor. I should have asked before, Marcus said quietly. But what was Sarah like? Really like, beyond the stories you've told the girls? Victoria looked surprised by the question, but seemed to understand its importance. She was stubborn like me, driven, passionate about causes she believed in. But she was also gentle in ways I never learned to be. She could diffuse any argument with humor, and she had this way of making everyone feel heard and valued. Marcus nodded, still staring at the gravestone. Tell me about the promise she asked you to make. I told you already. Tell me again, word for word, if you can remember. Victoria closed her eyes, clearly reliving a painful memory. She said, Mom, if anything happens to me, find Marcus Chen, the soldier who pulled me out of that burning vehicle in Afghanistan. Make sure he's okay. Make sure his family is taken care of. Promise me. And you said, I said I promised. I thought she was being dramatic, worried about nothing I never imagined. Victoria's voice broke slightly. Marcus turned to face her for the first time since they'd arrived. Victoria, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. She nodded, bracing herself. If Sarah had never asked you to make that promise, would you still have sought me out after reading that psychological evaluation? Victoria considered the question carefully, and Marcus appreciated that she didn't immediately rush to give him the answer she thought he wanted to hear. I don't know, she said finally. I'd like to think I would have, because anyone with the resources to help should help when they see someone in danger. But honestly, Marcus, I might not have. There are thousands of people in crisis, and I can't save them all. Sarah's request gave me permission to focus on you specifically. So it was suicide prevention. It was suicide prevention and honoring my daughter's final wish and genuine attraction to the kind of father you are, and a dozen other complicated motivations that all got tangled together. Victoria said, her voice growing stronger. Does it matter which reason came first? Does it change what we've built together? Marcus looked back at Sarah's grave, thinking about the young woman he'd known for perhaps an hour 2 decades ago, whose dying wish had set all of this in motion. You know what I think Sarah would say about all this? He asked. Victoria shook her head. I think she'd tell us to stop overthinking it and focus on what matters. The girls are happy and thriving. We've become a real family. We care about each other. Everything else is just details. Victoria's eyes widened with hope. Marcus, are you saying I'm saying I've been an idiot? Marcus interrupted. I've been so focused on why you chose me that I forgot to appreciate what we chose together after you found me. He reached for her hand, noting how cold her fingers were in the autumn air. Victoria, I don't care anymore whether you married me out of pity, obligation, or genuine attraction. What I care about is that we've made it work. We've created something beautiful from circumstances that could have been purely transactional. Victoria squeezed his hand tightly. So, you forgive me for the deception. I forgive you for caring enough to deceive me, Marcus said. But Victoria, no more secrets. If we're going to make this work long term, we have to be completely honest with each other from now on. Agreed, Victoria said immediately. Complete honesty, even when it's uncomfortable. They stood in silence for a few minutes, both staring at Sarah's grave and processing the weight of their conversation. Marcus, Victoria said finally. Aurea said there's something else I need to tell you. Something I've been afraid to admit even to myself. Marcus tensed, wondering what other revelation awaited him. I'm falling in love with you, Victoria said quietly. Not with the idea of you. Not with the family we've created together, but with you. Your kindness, your strength, the way you make me laugh when I'm taking myself too seriously. It terrifies me because I didn't expect it. And I don't know how to navigate romantic feelings at my age. Marcus felt something shift in his chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the weak autumn sun breaking through the clouds above them. Victoria, he said, turning to face her fully. I've been falling in love with you too. I just didn't know how to reconcile those feelings with our practical arrangement." She looked up at him with wonder and relief. "So, what happens now?" Marcus glanced once more at Sarah's grave, then leaned down and kissed Victoria gently. It was their first real kiss. Not the chaste peck they'd exchanged at their wedding, but a kiss between two people who had chosen each other fully and honestly. "Now we go home to our daughters," Marcus said. "And we stopped pretending this is anything other than a real marriage between two people who love each other." As they walked back to the car, Marcus felt lighter than he had in days. The revelation about Victoria's investigation had been painful, but it had also forced them to confront the true nature of their relationship and acknowledge feelings they'd both been hiding. Whatever had brought them together initially, what mattered now was what they chose to do with the love they'd found along the way. 2 years after their wedding, Marcus stood in the kitchen of their home, watching Victoria teach Emma how to crack eggs for pancakes while Lily practiced piano in the next room. The morning sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating a scene of domestic happiness that still sometimes caught him off guard with its simple perfection. "Daddy, look, look." Emma held up a perfectly separated egg, beaming with pride. "I didn't get any shells in it." "Excellent work, kiddo," Marcus said, ruffling her hair before stealing a kiss from Victoria's cheek. The casual intimacy felt as natural as breathing now. They'd moved into the same bedroom months ago. Their relationship having evolved from practical arrangement to genuine love story. Lily's piano playing drifted through the house, a complex piece by Chopin that she'd mastered with Victoria's patient instruction. At years old, she was already showing signs of real musical talent, and they'd begun discussing whether she might want to attend a performing arts high school. "So," Victoria said, flipping a pancake with practiced ease, "are you nervous about today?" Marcus shook his head, though his stomach held a flutter of anticipation. Today marked the official opening of Chen Construction Consulting, his new business venture that Victoria had encouraged him to pursue. After months of preparation, he was finally ready to return to the construction industry as an independent consultant, helping other contractors avoid the kinds of safety violations that had ended his own hands-on career. "More excited than nervous," Marcus said honestly. "Though, I still can't believe you convinced the Hendersons to be my first clients." Victoria smiled. "I simply mentioned that I knew someone who could help them with their renovation project. The fact that you're brilliant at what you do convinced them to hire you." It was a typical Victoria move, opening doors, but letting Marcus walk through them on his own merit. She'd learned to balance her desire to help with respect for his independence. And Marcus had learned to accept her support without feeling diminished by it. "Girls," Victoria called. "Breakfast is ready." As they gathered around the kitchen table, the same table where they'd had their first fight about hiring a housekeeper, and later their first honest conversation about falling in love, Marcus marveled at how natural this all felt now. Emma chattered about her upcoming school play. Lily discussed a book she was reading for her advanced English class, and Victoria listened to both with the kind of focused attention that made each girl feel like the most important person in the world. After breakfast, as Victoria helped the girls gather their school bags and Marcus prepared to leave for his first client meeting, Lily approached him with unusual seriousness. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart. What's on your mind?" "Do you think Mom would have liked Victoria?" The question caught Marcus off guard, though he realized he'd been wondering the same thing himself. Rebecca's presence had faded from their daily lives, not through forgetting, but through the natural process of building new memories and traditions. Her photograph still sat on the mantelpiece, and they still talked about her with the girls. But Victoria had become their primary mother figure in every practical sense. Yes, Marcus said without hesitation. I think your mom would have loved Victoria. She would have been grateful that someone who cares about you girls as much as she did came into our lives. Lily nodded thoughtfully. Good, because I love Victoria. But I didn't want to hurt Mom's feelings. Marcus knelt down to his daughter's eye level. Lily, loving Victoria doesn't diminish your love for Mom. The heart has room for both, and Mom would want you to be happy above everything else. That's what Victoria told me too. Lily said, smiling. She said, love multiplies, it doesn't divide. From the hallway came Victoria's voice, calling for everyone to hurry or they'd be late. Marcus hugged Lily tightly before standing up, struck once again by Victoria's wisdom in handling the delicate balance of honoring Rebecca's memory while establishing herself as a maternal presence in the girls' lives. As they prepared to leave, the girls for school, Victoria for a board meeting, Marcus for his first day as an independent businessman, Victoria caught his hand. Marcus, I'm proud of you, she said quietly. Not just for starting the business, but for everything, for being brave enough to accept help when you needed it, for letting us become a family, for choosing love over pride. Marcus squeezed her hand, thinking about the journey that had brought them to this moment. From that desperate day in the coffee shop to this morning of new beginnings, they'd traveled an unlikely path to happiness. Thank you, he said simply, for seeing potential in a broken man and his daughters, for believing we could become something beautiful together. Victoria smiled, the same smile that had become as familiar and beloved as his own daughters' faces. Thank you for letting me love you all. As they separated for their different destinations, Marcus carried with him the knowledge that sometimes the best things in life came from the most unexpected places. He'd entered into marriage with Victoria as a desperate man seeking survival for his children. He was leaving for work this morning as a man who had found love, purpose, and a family more complete than he'd ever imagined possible. The business card in his wallet read, Marcus Chen, construction consultant. But he could have just as easily carried one that said, husband, father, and grateful man. Because in the end, that's what he'd become. Not through his own efforts alone, but through the grace of a woman who had seen his potential when he could no longer see it himself. Sarah Morrison Blackwood's final wish had been fulfilled in ways none of them could have anticipated. Marcus Chen was not just okay. He was thriving, surrounded by love and purpose in the kind of family that could overcome any obstacle together. As he drove toward his first client meeting, Marcus whispered a quiet thank you to the young woman whose dying request had set all of this in motion. Then he focused on the road ahead, eager to begin this new chapter in a life that had been transformed by the unexpected power of love in all its forms.